So this comes with Windows 10 Home. What the? Come on, let's get rid of that Windows Home. Let's get some Windows Pro. Copy and paste my code from the description. You can also get Office 2019. Just paste my code. Woof. It's Windows Pro time.
Righto, Teleodo champs. Now, I have been asked so many times to compare the Razer Blade to the XPS 15, and while I don't think they're in the same class or category, well, you got your wish here, because for content creation, a lot of people want to use the Razer for content creation. Yes, they do have that hashtag made by Blade. Yeah, music producers like them. They seem to be used in the creative sphere quite a lot. Now, they are a gaming laptop first and foremost, so go check out my gaming review if you want to know how it performs for gaming, and I've made another video about it as well, talking about it compared to the MacBook Pro and the XPS 15. But let's see how good it is for content creation. Now I'm going to compare it to the Aero as well. The Aero, which 100% would be its competitor, because they're both in the thin and premium gaming laptop sort of segment. They're not really with the MacBook Pro and XPS 15, but people want to compare it. Let's do it. So first things first, the display. If you're a creator and you want this laptop, get the OLED. I have the 240Hz model IPS. Yeah, it's fine. You'll be able to get the job done if you're a content creator. The color accuracy is okay. The contrast isn't that great, but it does have that super smooth, silky, buttery smooth 240Hz display. That's great for gaming, content creation. Just get the OLED. We know how good the OLED is. They're all using the same OLED panel, and you're getting 100% DCI-P3 with that OLED panel. When it comes to audio production, now I did actually test this with USB, and I also tested it with the audio interface. The audio interface I was easily able to get down to 32 I/O, so 32 buffer size there. No problems whatsoever. And in terms of Windows laptops, I have to say it's probably the best. If you look at the DPC latency monitor, it goes into the green. Yeah, it's a little bit in the yellow, but every other Windows laptop I've used, yeah, it's mostly yellow the whole time. This is really good for audio production. Yeah, the fan, you will hear it if it decides to kick in. If you've got some plugins or VST or whatever, you're going to hear it. So it's not as quiet as, say, the XPS 15 or MacBook Pro, but that's gaming laptops. That's how they are. It's not that loud. I mean, I had a gate. It was like -30 or something like that, and I wasn't picking up any of the fan noise. So for audio production, no problem. So let's get into the benchmarks. Now, the Razer does come with the -100 millivolt out of the box. All these scores here are the -100 millivolt, so they're all undervolted, pretty much the same. Now this is After Effects, and this tests everything. It tests rendering, it tests preview, it tests tracking, all sorts of things. Top left hand side you have the Aero, top right hand side you have the XPS 15, and the bottom left hand side is the Razer. Now the Razer has an RTX 2080 Max-Q. They all have the same CPUs, the i7-9750H, and the Aero has an RTX 2070 Max-Q. XPS 15 has a GTX 1650. They all have the same RAM here. You will be able to actually get better scores if you have 32 gigs versus 16. And randomly on the bottom right hand side, that's an eGPU with an AMD 5700 XT. So it's random, but that's how the Razer will perform with an eGPU 5700 XT. So you can see there, it's not really worth it. You're really going to have to get a 2080 Ti desktop to even match what it has inside already. So you can see here the scores are lower than the Aero, even though the Aero has an RTX 2070 versus RTX 2080 on the Razer. Although now After Effects does use the GPU more, especially in previews, it is still mainly, I would say, a CPU heavy sort of application. Even though the Razer has a more powerful graphics card, the score difference is basically down to CPU frequency. I mean, they both have the same CPU, but at -100, the Aero can get absolute maximum out of that CPU. It'll hit 4 gigahertz all cores all day. Whereas the Razer, the clock will back off a bit and it won't stay at that 4 gigahertz. So that's basically the difference. All right, so with Photoshop here, on the right-hand side, we'd have the Razer Blade score, and a 760 we get there, which is really good. It actually beats out the Aero and it beats out the XPS 15, Aero having 735, and the XPS 15 having 726. Now, all in all, really, there's not that much difference between them all, but the Razer is the fastest. And if you don't know, Photoshop loves AMD and it loves the Macs at the moment because, Adobe done a lot of optimizations for the Mac, and the Macs just kill it here in terms of, this Photoshop benchmark. They always sort of win, and even the 8th generation Mac. So I guess that's no surprise here, but for Photoshop, it is the fastest one out of the i7s I've used. I love these Puget System benchmarks. They're so good. And this one is the best benchmark for Premiere because it is like real projects. It is real playback. It is real rendering. It is real testing of all the different types of video codecs. You know, we've got H.264, 265, we've got ProRes. Even like Canon C200 footage, it has 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second. And it tests GPU effects and CPU effects, so transitions and all that sort of stuff you do in the timeline. So it's really comprehensive benchmark. And this one comes out on top. It's both faster than the XPS 15 and the Aero. Now the Aero does have the RTX 2070, so I'd expect the Razer to be faster. It does have the RTX 2080. And with the XPS 15, that is the i9 by the way, it falls a bit short. Now where the XPS 15 falls short is when you get to GPU effects and stuff like that. Anything accelerated by GPU, the 1650 compared to RTX 2070, 2080, that's where it sort of lags behind these two laptops. That being said, if all you're doing is what most people do, H.264, 30 FPS or even 60 FPS, and you don't load up the GPU effects or whatever until the end of the project, you're going to get a great performance with the XPS. I have no problems editing 4K with transitions, whatever, color correction, grading, anything like that. But of course, if you start loading up GPU effects or anything that hits the GPU Aero, and of course this Razer blade, which is the fastest one here, of the i7s I've tested, great for video editing. And of course, this translates into Resolve and stuff like that. Like Resolve that uses the GPU quite a lot, you know, the RTX 2080 in the Razer is going to kill it. And with Avid, I haven't even tested Avid ever, so I'll have to test that. But anyway, the projects I was talking about that all these laptops crush is this project here. It's just one of my normal projects. It's 4K, H.264, 100 megabits per second. Some transitions in there, color grading, whatever. And this is just the render time, so it's not a playback. They all play it back, no issue whatsoever. They just laugh at playing back this 4K project at full. And you can see, yeah, it's competitive, right? It does a good job in rendering, hardware encoding, software encoding. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to quickly do it. Just throw it out there so you can see for content creation how the Razer is. Catch you in the next one, guys. Tally ho.